We formed a quorum. May I call to order the subcommittee on resolutions of the UN Security Council in relation to sanctions. Please invite the administration to join us. Good afternoon. We have 5 resolutions to examine this afternoon, and I would like to base our examination on the English text. I don't know whether members have brought along their English texts. I hope so, because there are 5 resolutions. Our legal advisor, Ms. Joyce Chen, will look at resolutions 1, 2, 3, and 4, and resolution number 5 will be done by another legal advisor. Now, if we are ready, let's just take a look at the first resolution. United Nations Sanctions Central African Republic Regulation 2017. Legal Notice 79. Can you brief us on it, please, first? Under the UN sanctions resolution, the CE will have to give effect to certain decisions in resolutions 2339 to adopt the sanctions passed by the Security Council. We have passed we have gazetted and also commenced 5 resolutions for UN sanctions applicable to Central African Republic, Yemen, and South Sudan, and Democratic Republic of Congo, and Libya. We've also consulted the relevant trade, and my colleague will brief you on the details afterwards. First, UN Sanctions Central African Republic Regulation 2017. Central African Republic has escalated armed confrontations within the country, and then the UN Security Council passed a resolution to impose a 1-year sanctions on against the Central African Republic, and the resolution 2339 was adopted by the UNSC on the 27th of 2017. Please refer to Annex C to extend the sanctions until end of January 2018. We received notice from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs that we have to implement Resolution 2339 in respect of Central African Republic and Hong Kong to cover the supply of arms, etc. The new resolution has taken effect and will expire on the 31st of July 2017. This country is ranked 172nd when it comes to trading relations with Hong Kong, and because the sanctions imposed by UNSC will not generate any negative impact on Hong Kong when it comes to trading. Thank you. Can we please take a look at Annex D? We will go through the pages one by one, and I will explain to members the amendments. We will start from part 1. Page 3, relevant entity for the interpretation. There is a technical amendment. We will replace in accordance with under. We have used this in previous resolutions. We believe it will be more appropriate to use under when it comes to this scenario. And then page 4, a similar amendment. Page 5, part 2, all the way to page 13, there is amendment on prohibition against entry or transit by certain persons. This was discussed in the first meeting. We like to scrap into and through the Hong Kong SR in Section 7 because we are talking about certain exemptions under Section 6. We believe the current version is clear enough with the amendments, and this is consistent with our treatment of similar provisions. Page 16, the provision of certain assistance or training. In 9.2a, we have added a phrase to align with the wording used in Resolution 2339 because the security forces this time include the following, including the civilian law enforcement institutions of the Central African Republic. What does that mean? Institutions, are we talking about police force or what? The Chinese rendition is civilian law enforcement organizations. All right, please go on. Page 18. The date is amended to reflect the latest date in the most recent resolution, and that's the 27th of July 2017. That was the day when the resolution was passed. Page 39. The duration. The regulation will expire at midnight on the 31st of July 2018 to reflect the expiry date contained in the resolution. Any question, please? No? Thank you. Then please go on. Thank you. The second is an amendment regulation. United Nations Sanctions Yemen Regulation 2018 Amendment Regulation 2017. Yemen is an Arabian country in West Asia. The UN has been providing assistance to Yemen for the political transition of the country. Treaty was signed and the situation has stabilized. However, there are certain challenges there. Armed forces have carried out assassinations against political and military figures. In the 2014, UNSC decided to impose 1 year travel and financial sanction on Yemen. And then on the 27th of February 2017, UNSC passed Resolution 2342 to renew the sanctions until February 26, 2018, we received a note instruction from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs to implement Resolution 2342 in respect of Yemen in the Hong Kong SAR, and the sanctions will expire on the 26th of February 2018. Yemen is ranked 137th when it comes to trading relations with Hong Kong, and the total volume is $14.5 million. And the trade doesn't involve the weapons and arms mentioned in the resolution, and therefore Hong Kong will not be affected by the resolution. Thank you. Please refer to Annex E, page 1. Again, in accordance with, is replaced by under. Page 2, similar amendments. Page 3, license, and that is to replace the new section, old section with the new one.
On page 4, it's the same. We replace in accordance with by under. And in part 2, from page 5 to 9, there are no changes. On page 10, okay, please continue. We were on page 10. Section 5A has been obsolete, it expired, and Section 5B is added to page 12 and 13. That is regarding the financial sanctions. And on page 14, Sections 7A and B, they are related to prohibition against entry or transit. They have expired, so we have 7C and 7D added. And then part 3A, the license, and Section 9A, 9B have expired. So we have replaced it with 9C and D. The contents are the same as 9A and 9B. Part 4, starting from page 23 all the way to 39, page 39, there are no changes. Please continue. On page 40, 30A, regarding specification of relevant person or relevant entity by chief executive, that has expired, so we added 30B. On page 42, part 9, the duration, it spells out which sections will expire on the 26th of February 28. It's about the financial prohibitions and restrictions. So that would conclude the explanation. Why do we have on page 43 an explanatory note? Well, these are not part of the regulations. It's just printed out. The legal advisor, do you have anything to clarify? Thank you, Chairman. We see that on page 2, the duration, members will take note that the repealed 34 and the big difference between that and 35 is 9B and 30A that have expired and been replaced by 9D and 30E. These do not exist in the duration part. And before the meeting, we had sought clarification with the government, and the explanation we received was that members can note that 9D and 30B, these two sections are standard provisions to enforce the prohibitions. These are necessary and are not restricted by the duration, and they are not part of the sanctions. So the government feels that there shouldn't be any time duration constraint. If there's no time constraint, then 9B and 30D, these will not affect the regulation. We looked at it and feel that the government's amendment is free of problems. So I'd like to ask if the government has anything to add in part 9. Thank you, Chairman. The legal advisor is correct. 9D is about applications for licenses, and if they provide false information, what the outcome will be. 30B is about the chief executive. They can specify financial sanctions on certain people. So these are just standard provisions, and we feel these standard provisions, we do not need to repeal them on each occasion, and we don't mind keeping them intact, and we don't mind having durations for financial sanctions. Well, if we don't have questions, we can move on to the next regulation. It should be the Congo one. Thank you, Chairman. The third regulation is United Nations Sanctions Democratic Republic of the Congo Regulation 2017. This is in Central Africa, and since 1996 there's been civil war and military conflict, and by 2013 there was a peace accord that ended the war. So even though there's been a ceasefire, but the United Nations Security Council, they have implemented Rule 149, and they had increased sanctions against Congo, and in 2017, 21st of June, we had endorsed regulation, and that is in Annex D. So the embargo and tourist constrictions and financial restrictions will be extended to 2018. And we received instructions from MFA to implement the resolution, and we will continue to exercise sanctions against Congo. So the text is similar to the one that expired on 1st of July, and the new resolution will take place on 2018. The Congo's trade with Hong Kong, they rank 117, and the total trade is about 220 million Hong Kong dollars. So the commodities, the main materials and ammunition are not relevant to Hong Kong, so we won't. It will not have an impact on Hong Kong's trade. So I'd like to have Ms. Law talk about the content of the regulation. Ms. Law, please refer to Annex F of our paper. If we look at the first amendment, that would be on page 3. It's about Resolution 2293, and we say that we will be extending the Security Council Resolution 2360, and it was adopted by the Security Council on 21st June 2017. The next change is on page 7. We had changed some punctuation. On page 8, it's the same. On page 9, we added a comma. These do not affect the meaning. And on page 10, we added some punctuation marks. On page 11, we crossed out a comma, and we talk about entry or transit, and I explained that already. We are now using relevant entry or transit. That would suffice. Then on part 3, from page 13 to 16, there are no changes. On page 17, we have the changes in punctuation, and same on page 18. In part 4, from page 19 to 33, there are no amendments. And on page 34, we see changes to the punctuation. And on page 36, duration, we now refer to 1st of July 2018. The explanatory note is updated to the latest version. Thank you. I think there should be no questions. Any questions from the legal advisor? No. We can now move on to the next regulation. It should be the South Sudan 2017. Chairman, the 4th regulation is United Nations Sanctions South Sudan. That is a country in southern Central Africa, and by 2013 there was a political conflict, and the safety had deteriorated. There had been hostile activities, and they had broken out into all-out war. And in 2016 there was a resolution by the UN to implement some sanctions, including a tourist ban and financial sanctions. Now, since the hostilities have not ceased, the Security Council they had endorsed 2353 resolution, and we will extend the sanctions to 2018 31st of May. We received instructions from MFA to asking Hong Kong to implement the UNSC resolution 2353. So this had already expired on it's similar to the resolution that expired on 31st of May 2017. In 2016, the trade with South Sudan ranked 174. The trade volume was about 19 million Hong Kong dollars, and the trade between the two jurisdictions are not related to ammunition or arms, so it doesn't affect the trade between the two jurisdictions. I'll ask Ms. Law to talk about the content of the regulations. Thank you, Chairman. Please refer to the markup copy in Annex E. This, on page 1, the first amendment is in page 4. It's just a change in punctuation, same for page 5. Page 6, there's a change in punctuation. In clause 4, talks about the relevant entry or transit. It's now a uniform wording. Part 3 on page 8, we see in clause 5 2A bracket 2 under the law of Hong Kong SAR. So this is in line with the resolution content. It says in accordance with national laws, and so we've added under the laws of Hong Kong. Then on page 10, punctuation change. Part 4, from page 11 to 16, there's no change. Page 17, the change in punctuation. Page 18, the duration has been extended to 31st of May 2018. Thank you, Chairman. I'd like to ask Section 5 under the laws of Hong Kong SAR. In the resolution, it says in accordance with national laws, because the resolution refers to member states, so they talk about national laws. Okay. Legal advisor. So that would conclude, and we move on to the next resolution, next regulation. We need to change the legal advisor.
Oh, sorry.
Thank you, Joyce. Thank you, Wendy. Deputy Secretary, please brief us on the Libya Regulation 2011. The fifth resolution is UN Sanctions Libya Regulation 2011 Amendment Regulation 2017. Libya is a country in northern Africa, and starting from 2013, there have been a number of popular uprisings against the regime of Aqueva, and it turned to a full-fledged conflict against government forces and the opposition. And since 2011, the UN has been imposing sanctions on Libya, including arms embargoes and so forth. In 2011, the UNSC lifted some of the sanctions on arms embargo and assets freeze, and also the no-fly zone was also removed to come back as illegal export of oil. In 2014, UNSC expanded the sanctions to impose measures on vessels designated by the committee. And then in NXT, the resolution 2146 was passed to extend the embargo on oil exports until the 15th of November 2018. We received instructions from MFA to extend the resolution to our local legislation. That is to add provisions that lapsed on the 31st of July 2018, and they will lapse on the 15th of November 2018. Libya ranked 142nd among Hong Kong's trading partners with a total trade volume of $119 million. The commodities are mainly electronic equipments, and the proposed sanctions will not affect our trading relations with Libya. So I will give the floor to Ms. Choi to explain to us details of the amendments. Please refer to Annex E, marked up copy. Page 2, Libyan government. According to the resolution, the full name is as it is here. What was it like? It was only called the government of Libya. It was not defined. It's now called the government of national accord in Libya. And then page 3, amendment to the government of Libya to Libyan government. And then there is a definition for petroleum to follow. Now, the last resolution was mainly about crude oil. This time, the sanctions include crude oil and refined petroleum products. So this is added to the interpretation section. Page 4. Resolution 2146. Because it's now renewed, and so we have added new dates to the resolution. Pages 6 and 7, amendment to the punctuation, same with page 9 and page 10. 3E and 3F were about sanctions on crude oil, but now we have a new 3G and 3H. Instead of crude oil, it is now petroleum, because the scope of sanctions is now extended. Page 13, changes in punctuation, same with pages 14, 15, 16, and 17, 18, and 19. Page 21. 7E and 7F are now lapsed. They relate to financial transactions involving crude oil. We have added 7G and 7H to replace crude oil with petroleum. 23 to standardize the use of terms. 24, 25. There were provisions no longer valid. They were about providing services to certain ships. So we cannot, for instance, provide refilling service to these ships. Instead, we have 10 JKI. Page 29, change in punctuation. 30, 33, no changes. 33, Libyan government instead of government of Libya, because we have placed an interpretation for Libyan government. No changes in 33 to 35. 36, amendment to the term government of Libya. And then 15A, because it's no longer valid, we have replaced it with 15B. And 37, 38, amendments to punctuations. No change to 39, page 40. Just the numbering of the sections. 41 to 46, no amendment. 57, changes to punctuation. 58, again, duration. Sets out the expiry date of the sanctions on petroleum. That is the 15th of November 2018. Thank you. Any questions, please? Legal advisor? No? Then 5. Yes, Mr. Dennis Kwok. What about North Korea? Will there be new sanctions to be passed? In fact, I've asked the Deputy Secretary and the PAS to give us some update informally after the meeting, or should we regard it as an AOB item? Now, if you're interested in learning about North Korea, shall we deal with it after this meeting? I'm just a bit concerned because the international community has expectations for Hong Kong, and that is to implement sanctions against North Korea. So I'd like to ask the administration whether you want to do it as an AOB item or after this meeting is closed. We will respect your choice. Yes, I think it is okay for us to give you an update as an AOB item. Yes, please, because members may have questions. Members may have noted that all along we follow up on sanctions imposed by United Nations on various countries very proactively. Now, we have a UN sanctions North Korea regulations. We do have regulations, but recently there are new sanctions passed. So we are drafting the new regulations targeted at North Korea. We'll follow the usual procedures, and we will enact a subsidiary legislation, have them gazetted. Any comments on that, Mr. Kwok? Nothing, but I look forward to early passage of the regulations. I'd like to know how many resolutions are there involving North Korea yet to have regulations enacted. There are 4 now, so you have to work speedily. Yes, we have to use local legal terms to reflect the sanctions, and this poses some challenges for you. We understand the members would like us to use terms that are enforceable in Hong Kong, and DOJ is now looking at the drafting, and we will pass the legislation according to our established procedures. Mr. Holden Chow. Thank you. So 4 regulations are about against North Korea, all of them? Yes, all of them. I'll ask one more question, and then we will wrap up the meeting, unless Mr. Chow has another question. In recent weeks, we've heard of Hong Kong companies being used as the backdoor to North Korea. Although this subcommittee is to discuss the subsidiary legislation only, and policies and enforcement should be dealt with by another panel. But since we're on this question, I'd like to know whether the enforcement of these sanctions are under the portfolio of your bureau or the Commerce and Economic Development Bureau, and what measures do you have to target at such trading activities? The responsible bureau is the Commerce and Economic Development Bureau. So once the subsidiary legislation is passed, then the customs and excise and the police will be the enforcement agencies. Chairman, you said that there have been reports that Hong Kong companies are involved. We have noted that, and at the expert committee of UN, from time to time there are discussions, and if there are such incidents, we will follow up and take enforcement action, although we're not going to comment on individual cases. As regards our division, the division of labor between our bureau and the Commerce and Economic Development Bureau, well, if it is related to our bureau, we do have the responsibility to enact domestic legislation and to take follow-up action. Yes, I think the police should be responsible for dealing with intelligence related to trade. And if you have received any intelligence, I think you will pass it on to the Customs and Excise Department. The police will follow up. Is that right? Yes. Any more questions? No. Thank you very much, Mr. Chow.